My name is Grimshaw and I'm an artist and I live in North London. I'm from the north of England. I've tried to describe my style many times. I guess the most inaccurate but nearest is figurative abstraction. It's primarily figurative, but I get a little bit bored just doing straightforward academic painting, so I like to mix in a few bits, and that's where the abstract bit comes in. My canvases, my studio canvases, begin life ironically on computer, even though I'm known for being quite a traditional oil painter these days. They start in a very complicated multi-layered Photoshop file, which kind of shocks people a little bit, but that's where I build up my ideas, and it allows me to play around and do very obsessive remixes of everything, as opposed to doing it with paint, and then you end up using a lot of paint and not always happy with what you get. So I get the balance, I call it the balance, I get the balance of my pictures digitally, and they're almost a work in art within themselves, but maybe I'm a bit biased in that way. It was more of a traditional route, really. I mean, when I was a kid, I would just, I don't know really. It was, I think a lot of the problems is with people when they're doing photography or painting, they want to create something, but they don't always know what they want to say. And I think, so I used to just go to the library. I used to go into the adult section of the library, and I'd get out these books, and I'd sometimes paint copies from the books, and I'd take the books back and they'd be all covered in paint, and these very bespectacled ladies would be really irate. But so it was hard knowing what to paint as a kid. So I used to mix it up, really, just books from the library, copy some punk album covers, whatever was around, and yeah, it was more of an organic approach to creating as opposed to now, which is quite digital photography governed. Contrary to my pasty little Celtic skin, I'm actually known now for my Indigenous paintings and paintings of people of colour, but particularly tribal or Indigenous words fly around often when my name is, especially the street art, comes into a conversation. So yeah, but I don't see it as simple as that. I guess being a painter, it's interesting for other people to see us talk, because we often talk about kind of skin tones and shade, and we don't always think of the political, cultural side of what we're doing. And I think but yeah, I'm known for the Indigenous stuff, but for me it's about theatre, it's about drama and about emotion as well, and lots of other subjects. But I think tribal and Indigenous would be something that probably comes to people's minds. For me, everything stems back to like kind of 1980, really, when I was just getting into music and art and things, and it's kind of my interest in kind of Native American culture, but and also maybe military and ceremonial attire. So it originally stems from that, but it's interesting because I was asked years ago to do, and I was totally oblivious to the Free West Papua thing, but I was asked to do a wall piece, and I was really at a crossroads with what I was gonna. It was quite a horrible time, really, because I was quite conflicted about what I wanted to do, and I saw these sketches I'd done, and I thought they were really dark because they were quite intense tribal images. They were quite, and the person I showed them to really loved them and was like, I didn't know you were doing that, I really loved them. So it was kind of a bit of a turning point where I thought it was going to be a little private, niche-y kind of thing for me, but so it was interesting, really. People really responded quite well to that kind of quite edgy, defiant tribal look, and also the emotional side as well. So yeah, it was an interesting, and that sent me off on a trajectory that I'm kind of still on in a way, and slightly moving on from. I'd like people to come away and feel, obviously, some of the emotions that we've had in the older work, because again, the core of the paintings are there, the eyes, those emotive, powerful, emotional eyes. But then it's what you do with it and what you layer over it. Like a lot of people in lockdown, you know, a lot of us have found our attitude towards mental health, or our own mental health has changed, and I've gone down a little bit more of a kind of psychological route, and we're not going into too much detail, and it's really made, and I've also been trying to be very aware of being aware, if that makes sense, rather than just painting and being kind of very distracted. I've been reading a lot, quite a bit, and watching a lot of footage about being aware and being present and what we're thinking as human beings and where do these thoughts come from. So there's a very like emotional, psychological element to these. So I actually don't, you know, sometimes when you're painting, for me, I'm on my own kind of trajectory, and it's hard to know what the viewer sometimes gets, because I know as a visual image what's resonating with me, but sometimes when people start explaining what their interpretation is, they don't really link up. And I don't mind that, because that's, you know, I'm a painter, not a writer. I don't really want to dominate what, you know, I want people to be quite organic. But I think because there's so many elements, I think one of the things I've noticed looking with hindsight at the works is some of the faces, like this one behind us, is quite a gentle face, and but then there's a lot of conflict and a lot of tension within some of the sculptures. But again, it comes back to that idea of where masks again, where somebody can be really smiling at work, but they're actually really inside quite in a troubled way. And I had a friend who took her own life during lockdown. So it's kind of, it brings up some of those what's on the surface and what's psychologically behind. So I hope, and I think my work's always touched on, it's always gone a bit more. I've never been known for somebody who's just done very flashy kind of graphic type stuff. My work's always had I like to think, a bit more depth. But with this, it'd be interesting to see. I mean, years ago, I did a show especially about my childhood and domestic violence and things. So I had a lot of people say, I can really relate to your work because of my story and my dad and things. And people could really relate. But with this work, I don't really know. It'd be interesting to see what people come up with, you know, and what people have to say. And so it's a mystery, really. I don't know. After my journey over the last 2 years, I'm just starting to wonder, really, is painting just been this big? Because people come up to you at show and they say, oh, I'd love to be able to paint, I always wanted to paint, and they have these kind of assumptions. They make assumptions about what it's like to be an artiste. But over the last 2 years, I'm just starting to wonder, is my painting just been like one big coping mechanism, do you know, that's like held me together? Because I've said quite a few times that I think, and I'm not going to go into detail, I won't put anybody off the dinner, but I've said a few times that I probably wouldn't be alive if it wasn't for the painting, literally. So I'm starting to now look at the painting in a whole different way, and often on days and I think, is it what you really want to do, or is it just something that's anchored you? And I do see it like a friend that I've had all the way through my life, like a consistent friend that's been like a lifeline. So I've started to see my painting in a different way, and I used to think it were about paint and spray paint and tubes of oils, but I think it's a lot more complicated than that.